We're continuing the Onslaught build series here on the channel, going over some of the best builds to take into the Onslaught activity, and in this video, we are back on the Warlock with a classic build. If you're a Hunter or Titan main, don't worry, I already have a couple of builds here on the channel that you can use in the Onslaught activity on top of some other ones for the Warlock. And if you don't want to miss out on any of these builds, be sure to subscribe. Let's not waste any time and dive right into it. To be honest, I really like Strand Warlock overall. The super has good DPS, and there are multiple options for you to have extremely good crowd control with your abilities and stuff under the subclass. You know, Horde Shuttle being able to create more threadlings is just absolutely hilarious. But for this build, we're going to focus on the Necrotic Grip Exotic Gauntlets. With this perk, Grasp of the Devourer, damaging combatants poisons them, dealing increasing damage over time. Defeating a poisoned combatant spreads condition. When it says this, it means your melee. So all you have to do is hit him with a melee, whether it's powered or not. And it provides a moderate benefit to airborne effectiveness stat for all weapons of sorrow. Now, there are multiple ones, but the two that I recommend are Thorn and Osteo Striga for this activity in particular. You can use Necrochasm, but there's a reason why I'm using Thorn with this, and I'll talk about that later when we get to the weapon options. But the cool thing here is that both Thorn and Osteo Striga can benefit from the poison spread. Under the Broodweaver subclass, obviously Needlestorm, fantastic super, especially for single target DPS, and it can wipe out a bunch of adds. But for our abilities, I'm going with the Healing Rift here. Burst Glide for movement, but you can use what you like. We only have the one melee, which is Arcane Needle, and it can deal Unravel. We will get 3 of those melees, and then we're using the Shackle Grenade. Now, the reason we're using that grenade is to take advantage of Mind Spunk Invocation. With this, it gives us a variety of bonuses to every single grenade, and with the Shackle Grenade in particular, what you can do is actually consume that grenade and get Weaver's Trance, so any final blows while Weaver's Trance is active creates a suspending detonation. With this build in particular, and you've probably seen it before, I've made multiple builds with this on the channel, but essentially, once you consume that grenade and get 1 kill, you can just spread Suspend across the field on top of the poison procs. For the second aspect, I like the Wanderer. So tangles you throw attach to targets and detonate into a suspending burst. Then destroying a tangle creates a suspending burst after a short delay. Threadling final blows create a tangle. I really like this one just because of the, add clear potential. But if you didn't want to use this, you could use something like Weaver's Call. So when you cast your Rift, 3 threadlings will come out. It's not as effective as it will be with Swarmers, but you can use it. I just like the Wanderer personally. For our fragments, first up is Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. It's a -10 to discipline, so any damage that we deal will give us grenade energy, whether it's with our abilities or our weapons. Next up is Thread of Warding. Picking up an orb of power grants Wolf of Mail. It is a -10 to resilience, but you do get extra damage resistance on top of 100 resilience, so that is why I like this one. Next is Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with the tangle grants melee energy. It is a -10 to strength, but with Necrotic Grips, I want my melee as much as possible because I'll be able to cast Unravel and also poison targets. Now for the last one, we do have a couple of options. Number one being Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. So anytime, with Mind Spunk Invocation, we get kills that'll, take out suspended targets. Same thing with the Wanderer. We can get our Healing Rift back faster, which can be good for survivability situations. But if you didn't want to use Thread of Mind, you can look into using something like Thread of Wisdom. So defeating suspended targets creates an Orb of Power. And since we're going to be suspending a lot of targets, that is some extra Orbs of Power that we can have on the field. Or you could go with something like Thread of Continuity. So the Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have an increased duration. So basically, any debuff that we have on the field will last longer. So the Suspend portion will last longer on targets. So I think this is a good substitution as well. Under the artifacts, since I am going to be using Solar Special and heavy weapons, I do like Flint Striker. So if I get some rapid precision hits or final blows, it will give me Radiant, which will, number one, proc Kindling Trigger. So my solar weapons will apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. And with Torch while I'm Radiant, I will deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs. This is all weapons across the board, and since I will be proccing a decent amount of Strand debuffs, as long as I'm Radiant, it is free weapon damage. The other one that I do like here in the final slot is Horde Shuttle. Damaging Unravel targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. I can cause Unravel with the melee, and that will spread around, and as long as that continues to spread and just hit one target, and I shoot that target, the chance of spawning a threadling is pretty high. I am using a rocket launcher, but I do like using a Waveframe GL for this. So if I get some rapid final blows with either of those weapons, it'll grant me an armor charge, which then you can use something like Argent Ordnance, which it'll consume an armor charge, but you do get increased damage and reload speed for your rocket launcher, which is pretty solid. I also like Overload Rocket so I can handle those Overload champions. That's the only way I'll be able to. So I definitely like having this one on. I would highly recommend Wished into Being. So while your super energy is nearly fully charged, ability final blows will spawn some extra orbs of power. And to be honest, your last one, one you can really put anywhere. It's kind of hard since we're not using any Strand weapons for unraveling or any Strand or stasis weapons for Dragon's Bite. So for this last one, you can put it anywhere you like. Before we dive into armor mods, let's talk about what stats to focus on. First up, we talk about every video, try to have tier 10 100 resilience. It's going to give you a 30% damage reduction, and we definitely want that for something like a Legend Onslaught. Secondly, I would focus on discipline. Discipline is tied to how fast we can get that grenade back, and the more chances that we have to consume that shout grenade to get Weaver's Trance for this build, the better. The next thing I probably would focus on is strength. Strength is tied to how fast we can get that melee back, and we definitely want some more unravel on the field from that melee. But to be honest, resilience and discipline are the two big ones. On the helmet here, I'm using kinetic siphon, so if I get some rapid final blows with Thorn or Osteo Striga, it will spawn an orb of power. And then I do like heavy ammo finder and scout for me and my team. Heavy ammo is always a good thing to have in Onslaught. On the gauntlets here, I'm rocking kinetic loader so I can reload my kinetic weapon faster, and I'm rocking double impact induction, so when I damage a target with my power melee attack, it gives me reduction to my grenade cooldown. On the chest piece, I'm rocking solar reserve so I get more ammo for both my solar special and heavy weapon. And then I like arc and void resistance, but honestly you can change these ones out depending on what the threat is that day. On the boots here, I'm rocking recuperation, so whenever I collect an orb of power, it gives me health back, which is really going to be the only way that we can have some health back with this build. Unfortunately, it's not going to have Devour or anything like that. Like Wolf of Mail is going to be great, but we definitely want health back in general. Then I'm also rocking one kinetic and solar weapon surge. If you want to do double kinetic, you totally can, but I definitely want some bonus damage for both of these weapon types. Essentially, my kinetic and solar weapons gain a small bonus to damage while I have any armor charge. My armor charge will now decay over time. Essentially, when you collect orbs of power, you'll gain armor charges. With this build in particular, you can have 3 armor charges, and with any of these blue mods, it makes each one of those last 10 seconds. So at 3 armor charges, we'll have 30 seconds of kinetic and solar weapon damage, so both my weapons will be effective. Lastly, on the class item, I'm using time dilation, so my decaying armor charge has a longer duration, so that 10 seconds that I mentioned per armor charge gets bumped up to 15 seconds. So at 3 armor charges, we get 45 seconds of that bonus weapon damage. And then I'm using double bomber, so when I use my class ability, it gives me a reduction to my grenade cooldown, which we definitely want. If you do want to replace one of these with something like powerful attraction, so when you cast that rift, it'll collect those nearby orbs, give you armor charges, give you woven mail. Again, that's totally fine. For your weapon options in the primary slot, like I said, I really like Thorn here. This thing is fantastic. Hand cannons can also stop unstoppable champions this season. This one feels pretty good. Again, when you defeat targets, it'll create remnants, and then when you pick those up, it'll give you some bonus damage. And then with the Thorn Catalyst, you'll get increased range, stability, handling, and stuff like that. The main thing with this is that Thorn hits like a truck. After the hand cannon buff, all hand cannons feel good, and exotic ones in particular, you know, exotic primaries got a bump in damage too, so Thorn just feels extremely good here. But if you don't have Thorn, Osteo Striga is a fantastic option as well. I believe this is a Witch Queen exclusive, and it is craftable, which means you can mess with some of the perks, but it fires a stream of sentient toxic projectiles that track to the targeted enemy. For my role, I have full bore with tactical magazine, and then obviously we have a straight perk, Toxic Overload. Landing a final blow or multiple precision hits triggers a burst that poisons nearby targets. And then Osteo Striga Catalyst, poison final blows, return ammo to the magazine. Then we also have hand laid stock. The main thing with Osteo Striga is that as long as you get kills with the weapon or with Necrotic Grip's poison, it will automatically reload the weapon. You can have a very high magazine with just this SMG. It doesn't hit as hard as Thorn in my opinion, but it's still a fantastic option. For my energy weapon, I like a solar special weapon. Explosive personality is fantastic. It's another one of these wave frame grenade launchers that's pretty solid in most activities. It can't come with chain reaction, but you can get auto loading with disruption break. So when you break a combatant shield, they're more susceptible to kinetic damage, so my Thorn will hit even harder. And with its origin trait land take, final blows with the weapon grant increased resilience and additional damage resistance from combatants, so that is going to be pretty good. But if you don't have this, I would highly recommend a Cartesian coordinate that can come with Vorpal weapon. Again, you can pick up this thing from Banshee whenever he has it. Again, he sells it occasionally. You'll have to check like every day, but if you find one with Vorpal, you're set. One more special weapon that I'll mention, which is very good, is the Indebted Kindness. This is the special sidearm from the Warlord's Ruined Dungeon, and as we know, sidearms can take advantage of anti-barrier sidearm this season, so we can pop those anti-barrier champions. This thing is fantastic. I have a pretty decent roll on it with beacon rounds, so final blows with this weapon grant your projectiles tracking, dealing further damage, extends its duration. And then with something like Volt Shot, reloading this weapon after defeating a target overcharges this weapon for a short period of time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. and with its origin trait Sundering, destroying vehicles and constructs or breaking a target's shields grants this weapon bonus reload speed and charge rate. And what's pretty cool, Sundering actually benefits from origin trait Specialization 1, which will improve its benefits. For heavy weapons, you can use your favorite, but if you have a solar rocket launcher, it's going to be pretty solid. Again, I have this crafted Apex Predator, Recon Bait and Switch. This thing is fantastic for that single target damage. It can take advantage of Blast Radius, Argent Ordnance here, Overload Rocket, and Flint Striker, so we can take advantage of all those things. If you wanted, more linear damage or just like precision damage, Cataclysmic, Brightest Attempt, both these things are craftable. If you have, the Avalanche Machine Gun from the Dawning, I have Rewind Rounds and Target Lock on this thing. But if you want to go to the Indebted Kindness route with Arc, if you have an Arc Rocket, it can do the same thing. It can take advantage of, Blast Radius, Overload, and Argent Ordnance, and then you can go on your boots and switch out Solar Weapon Surge for Arc Weapon Surge, so you could totally do that as well. Your special and heavy weapons are really just there for like decoration. The main thing here is being able to consume that Shackle Grenade to get Weaver's Trance and then proceed to just kill the enemies in their spawn. Like, we had a Tether Hunter with us, so he would tether him, I would shoot one, and any of the ads that spawned around him would just die, get suspended, poison every other target around them, and we could continue that cycle. And as long as I'm damaging those targets, I can get the grenade back pretty quickly. On top of that, with the Wanderer Tangle, it'll suspend more targets. When I damage targets with that Tangle, I can get my melee back, which means more Necrotic Grip poison across the board. Plus, the super in and of itself is really good for single target DPS, so whether you're going in to face, one of the bosses in the room, or the big Brig or an Ogre or something like that that is attacking the ADU, you can definitely use the super on them. To be honest, this build is just as good as it usually is. I didn't think it'd be as good as it is, especially for something like Legend Onslaught, but to be honest, this thing was cooking. We made it into the 40 waves all the way to the final boss easily. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Onslaught Poison Strand Warlock build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm actually going to put the dim link for this build in the description, so if you want to copy everything that I'm using, down to the subclass, the armor mods, the weapons, even the drip, if you like. I try my Guardians look fairly drippy, so shaders and ornaments will be included in that dim link. And like I said, test this build out for yourself. If there's something that you like using after testing, whether it's something under the subclass, a weapon, a mod, anything like that, definitely let me know in the comments. In any event, if what you saw is valuable or entertaining to you, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming Onslaught builds I'm going to be dropping on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube, but also on Twitch and TikTok as well. So if you want help with Legend Onslaught, with the Whisper mission, with 0 Hour, anything that has to deal with this Into the Light event, we're definitely going to be carrying people throughout the entirety of the event. So if you do want some help, hop in the chat, we'll get you in the queue. But if you want to be proactive, join my Discord. That's where people are going to be chatting about Destiny 2, looking for groups. I made an Onslaught LFG role, so if you're looking to do Onslaught and get some other people in to help you, again, that's going to be a really good way to do that. Lastly, if you want to help support the channel even more so I can continue making content for you guys, you can look into becoming a member. If you don't know what a membership is essentially like a Twitch subscription, but it's cheaper than a Twitch subscription, hilariously enough. In any event, you're going to get access to exclusive emotes, monthly badges, and other cool things here on the channel, like early access to every single one of my videos. So if you want more information, all you have to do is press the join button next subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one.